Hello and welcome to our webinar, Summertime DIY, Crafts and Gardening, Titles and Tips. I'm Annie Bostrom, Booklist Associate Editor in Adult Books. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Links to today's slides were sent directly to you from Zoom at the start of the webinar, but you can also download them at any time by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive a follow-up email containing links to today's slide presentation, certificate of completion, and video recording. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Annie Mazes, Manager of Library Marketing and Sales at Workman Publishing, Sophia Curtis, Librarian at Chapel Hill Public Library, Brian Ritter, Key Account Marketing Manager for Timber Press, and Jenn Carson, Library Director, L.P. Fisher Public Library. First, we'll hear from Annie Mazes. Annie handles adult library marketing for all imprints at Workman Publishing Company. She also heads up the ALMA Adult Library Marketing Association Committee. Some favorite titles include The Orphan Master's Son and Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast. After nearly 10 years, she still can't believe she gets to book talk with librarians every day. Hashtag dream job. Welcome, Annie. The floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. I'm excited to talk to you today. This is my email and social. If you'd like to get in touch, please have any questions about e-galleys or author visits, or if you want to try some of these crafts out and share pictures. I'm totally love seeing what you create. But yeah, I'm happy to chat. So I'm going to start today with 27 essential principles of story. I'm stretching the idea of craft a little bit with this book to include writing. So if you have ever entertained the idea of writing a piece of fiction, what better time to explore that? 27 Essential Principles of Story is a modern and actionable guide to the fundamentals of writing compelling, well-crafted, authentic stories in any medium, with lessons illustrated by novels, plays, films, music, video games, and TV, and writers from Shakespeare and Dostoevsky to Quentin Tarantino and Eminem. After each principle comes a lesson on how to do it, plus a mini final exam and related principles from other sources. Publishers Weekly gave it a starred review, and Booklist said, perfect for any writer looking to ensure their stories operate and resonate at the top of their potential. Writerly teens, still unsure of the mediums they wish to pursue, will love this holistic approach to effective storytelling. The 27 Essential Principles of Story goes on sale August 18th. Please ignore the date in the slide. Call to be creative. I'm stretching again, but I think it addresses something that many people struggle with. I'm not creative. I could never do something like that. I don't have time to be creative. If any of that sounds familiar, or you find yourself wishing that you had pursued your creative talents earlier in life, it is not too late. In a world full of creativity, there's no such thing as too late. Call to be creative is for anyone looking to reignite that spark inside of them and invite creativity into their lives through simple everyday practices. Mary Potter Kenyon walks you step by step through the process of exploring your true potential in this inspirational guide to embracing your innate creativity. With in-depth research from the most notable creative authorities, insight from creative pioneers, her personal experiences, and small activities to kickstart your own creative revolution, Kenyon offers you everything you need to live a more creative life. It's on sale September 1st. Ikebana Unbound. At its heart, the Japanese art of Ikebana is about celebrating an intimate connection with nature. To practice this is to find inspiration in the seasons, favor unassuming blooms and branches, seek balance and simplicity, and remain fully present in the moment. It is a beautiful, pure antidote to our age of distraction and excess. Honoring the lineage of Ikebana while making the art their own, Amanda Liu and Ivanka Matsuba of Studio Modine show us new ways to tell stories with flowers. They offer step-by-step instructions for dozens of stunning seasonal arrangements, while in the process introducing readers to the themes and stylistic signatures of the art form. Readers learn to create unique, meaningful, and authentic arrangements. Booklist gave this a star review, calling it a modern take on a centuries-old art that's breathtakingly simple. This goes on sale September 15th. This book, I think, is very cool. Drawn from 35 years of publishing trusted how-to books, this visual volume gathers entertaining and practical step-by-step knowledge from Story Publishing's wide-ranging library, covering topics from gardening and animal husbandry to wilderness survival skills, home repair and improvement, cooking and self-care. Readers with an interest in the myriad ways people have taught themselves to make, grow, and build will discover the ins and outs of how to do everything they've ever wondered about in this very colorful, inviting volume. With dozens of useful and intriguing visual tutorials that cover how to carve a turkey, capture a swarm of bees, predict the weather by the clouds, darn socks, create a butterfly garden, set up a dog agility course, keep a nature sketchbook, navigate for the stars, and so much more, this rich compendium will educate, fascinate, spark conversation, and inspire new hobbies and experiences. This is on sale September 15th. Life in the Studio. To step into potter Frances Palmer's world is to be surrounded by the trappings of a life that have been intentionally built to maximize creativity. A light-filled, airy studio, cutting gardens overflowing with flowers to be snipped as her inspiration strikes, shelves of cookbooks to peruse as she plans the menu of her next dinner party, and museum catalogs and art books to pore over when it's time to imagine a new vessel. After 30 years as an artist and entrepreneur, Palmer has discovered the things that matter most: determination, routine, prioritization, perseverance, and perspective. She has distilled these hard-won lessons, and more into her debut book, A Manual for Current and Inspiring Creatives. The book is loosely arranged chronologically. Along the way, readers are brought behind the scenes with hundreds of gorgeous photographs of her ceramics, her flower arrangements, and so much more, and step-by-step instructions for her most cherished techniques and recipes. It all adds up to a one-of-a-kind handbook for a creative life. This goes on sale September 29th. The Art of Tapestry Weaving. Rebecca Mezoff is a renowned teacher of contemporary tapestry weaving, and in this book she shares her techniques in this in-depth guide to every aspect of the process, from developing a color palette to selecting yarn, warping the loom, and weaving the image. Crafters can choose from inexpensive tabletop and handheld looms to larger floor looms. Detailed step-by-step photos and inspiring examples from a range of weaver artists make this a one-stop resource for tapestry weaving how-to. This will be available October 27th. The No-Till Organic Vegetable Farm. No-till, a method of growing crops and providing pasture without disturbing the soil, has become an important alternative to standard farming practices. In this comprehensive guide to successful no-till vegetable farming for aspiring and beginning farmers, author Daniel Mays, owner and manager of an organic no-till farm in Maine, outlines the environmental, social, and economic benefits of this system. The methods described are designed for implementation at the human scale, relying primarily on human power with minimal use of machinery. The book presents streamlined planning and record-keeping tools, as well as marketing strategies, and outlines community engagement programs like CSA, food justice initiatives, and on-farm education. This will be available November 10th. Growing Undercover. Increasingly unpredictable weather patterns and pest infestations are challenging today's vegetable gardeners, but best-selling author Nikki Jabbour has a solution: growing undercover. In this in-depth guide, Jabbour shows how to use row covers, shade cloth, low tunnels, cold frames, hoop houses, and other protective structures to create controlled growing spaces for vegetables to thrive. Photographed in her own super productive garden, Jabbour highlights the many benefits of using protective covers to plant earlier, eliminate pests, and harvest a healthier, hardier bounty year-round. With inventive techniques and proven firsthand knowledge, this book provides invaluable advice from a popular and widely respected gardening authority. On sale December 22nd. And I would be remiss if I did not include this link, so please jot that down. It is case sensitive. This is our entire garden catalog. There's a book for every kind of gardener in these 40+ pages. And I've had really wonderful response from librarians that I've sent it to, saying that they've circled things and ordered things on every page. So it's nice to hear that it's actually very helpful. It's available on our Workman website now under our catalogs, where all of our digital catalogs are available. And all of the books that are mentioned within are on sale and available now. Next up, I'm going to present some kids titles. I don't normally work on our kids books, but there were some very fun craft books and I couldn't leave them out. The first one up is an Unplugged play series. Screen-free, battery-free fun. When Unplugged Play was first published in 2007 as a parent-friendly encyclopedia of games and activities for all ages, Richard Louv, author of Last Child in the Woods, called it a terrific prescription for much of what ails children and parents today. Now it gets a fresh and appealing new life as 3 separate, brightly designed books, each targeted to a specific age group. These lively and easy games and activities, all kid-tested and approved for toddlers 1 to 2, preschoolers ages 3 to 5, and grade school kids 6 to 10, will foster kids' creativity, allow them to slow down the pace of daily life, and engage with their parents and peers without plugging in. The need, of course, is significantly more pressing than the book. When the book was originally published, screens are far more ubiquitous and cause parents even greater concern about their overuse. And these timeless, imaginative, easy to implement games are the perfect answer. Each volume includes games to play alone and games to play with siblings and friends and parents, games to play indoors and games for outside. There are craft projects, musical activities, guessing games, the kinds of truly fun activities designed to stretch the imagination, spark creativity, build strong bodies, forge friendships, and explore the real world. It is the opposite of hunkering in front of an addictive screen. All 3 are available August 18th. And the Busy Little Hand series is brand new from Story. It's so cute. Art Play uses paint, colored paper, clay, and other basic art supplies to teach kids to tap into their natural artistic abilities with fun-filled projects shown through easy-to-follow, colorful photos. From making bubble print and color collages to turning a t-shirt into a super kid cape, every activity is designed to spark imagination, learning, and creativity. And Food Play is a lively visual no-cook cookbook that features easy-to-follow steps for creating tasty food that will excite kids' interest in trying new flavors while fostering healthy eating habits. Colorful photo-driven recipes for making fruit wands, noodle bowls, chocolate smoothies, and more encourage kids to discover and expand their tastes and experience the joy and pride that comes from making with their own hands the foods that they eat. Both of these are available October 13th. And finally, I just wanted to make note of Beautiful Oops, which is celebrating 10 years. This award-winning, best-selling, one-of-a-kind interactive books has shown young readers how every mistake is an opportunity to make something beautiful, which is a wonderful lesson perennially. A singular work of imagination, creativity, and paper engineering, Beautiful Oops is filled with pop-ups, lift the flaps, tear holes, overlays, bends, smudges, and even an accordion telescope, each demonstrating the magical transformation from blunder to wonder. That is it for me. Thank you for listening, and I hope you all stay well.
Thank you, Annie. Next, we'll hear and see a video from Sophia Curtis. Sophia, they, them, is a youth librarian at Chapel Hill Public Library in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. At CHPL, they are also on the social media team and create content for Instagram and Facebook. They graduated from UNC Chapel Hill with a BA in Gender Studies and largely focused on activism, creativity, and mindfulness. Sophia lives in Carborough with their dog and enjoys printmaking, reading graphic novels, and swimming in rivers. Take it away, Sophia.
Can y'all see me? Okay, awesome. Hi, I'm Sophia. I am on the social media team at Chapel Hill Public Library, and I'm going to talk with y'all about what I do with that. Hopefully y'all will get some inspiration or motivation or some ideas for your own library Instagrams, and if you don't have one, maybe considering making one. Let's see. So I'm going to talk about 3 types of posts that I've been making. The first one is going to be a funny video. The second is going to be a pattern-based time lapse, and we're going to do a little demo with that. And then I'm also going to talk about a kids craft tutorial that I've been doing. So let's get to that funny video, if we can. Awesome. My dog.
Welcome to story time.
All right. So that's my funny video. That was just something that I did in response, or I'd made a few of them, but that was just something that I did in response to Chapel Hill Public Library, like having to close our doors for like safety stuff. And that was on March 13th. And so that was just sort of like me missing my friends and patrons and making my own makeshift story time. Yeah, I think that that is something more that's like fun for staff to create than like necessarily a program for your patrons. But yeah, trying to find something that like is joyful for you to make, I think really shines through. Like I had a good time making that video. Yeah, and that was just posted to Instagram only. I've been making content for both Instagram and Facebook, but that was just Instagram. Yeah, so let's get into the little time-lapse videos I've been making. You're gonna need a piece of paper and a marker. So I'll give you a couple seconds to grab that if you have it around. And I recommend using a marker because otherwise it's gonna be a pain to color in the stuff. But yeah, so we're gonna do that and then I'll talk about it. But basically we're gonna do like this big old swirly loopy thing that starts and ends in the same point. So I'm just gonna do some of these and then it ends right there. So there's my little doodle or scribble. Yeah, so for math reasons that I do not know, this will be turned into a checkerboard and it should work out. But I tend to like to start from the edge and work my way down. And I'm gonna scribble my way through it, but y'all take your time. I just want to, yeah, I'm just gonna get through it. But, so these sort of started, these were another response to the library closing its doors to our patrons. And it's just sort of like a relaxing thing to do. Yeah, so let's see, this is also another thing that I only post to Instagram. And I don't know, I think that the connection to like creativity and mindfulness is really important right now because a lot of people are feeling a lot of overwhelm with like the activism stuff that's going on and COVID. And so I think that this could be a really sweet service to provide for your patrons. It's just sort of like examples of relaxing creative activities. I also really like creative activities as a way of healing. And so this is sort of like bleeding into that. Yeah, so just sort of going through, ideally you would take your time, but I'm just scribbling away. But for this activity, typically I would just have my paper sitting like down on the table and then my phone above me recording. I have a time-lapse mode, so it's easy. Oh, there's my dog. I have a time-lapse capability thing for my camera, but if you don't, you can probably just get an app for it. But just using whatever you have available. And working your way through. Let's see. And if you mess up, like, it's fine. You're creating something. I really do believe that everyone's creative. And so I think that the merit of having a pattern-based activity sort of makes these more approachable. And maybe someone who thinks that they're not creative can see like me or someone doing something and making it kind of cool. I think I'm missing one. Oh, I made a mistake. Oh well. Let's see. We'll just color those in. Okay. So here's mine. Hopefully y'all got a little relaxed with that. I really enjoy doing these. I think that they can be really sweet. But yeah, so just sort of like broadening creativity and getting it off the pedestal. I think that like art and creativity, we often like put it up here, but this can be like a sweet little warm up or just something that like gets your mind off of those things going on. I get a lot of my ideas from YouTube or from like previous classes. Yeah, and just like looking at mindfulness patterns or mindfulness drawing. And yeah, so let's see. I think that that's all I'm gonna say about that. Yeah, oh, like bird's eye. I think the bird's eye time lapse has been the most like appealing for me to watch when I'm looking at other sort of like creativity videos. But do what feels good for you. Yeah, okay. Kids craft tutorial. Let's see, where is my example? So this is a little example of one of the kids crafts that I did, and it was just turning a sheet of paper into a book. And so I'll just quickly flip through, but it was just a little comic, and then you can flip it, and you know, cute, whatever. A lot of people can do it. And so, yeah, I think just sort of choosing activities that are kind of sweet can be really nice. But these are posted to Facebook and Instagram, but more specifically for Facebook, because in terms of audience, that's where our families and children sort of get our content. And so we do story time as well as like these creativity videos. And these videos sort of grew from existing programming that we had while we were open to the public. And that was Make It Monday and then a Sunday Steam. And so those were both sort of like creative based activities that librarians would put on for kids, and they would show up and do them. But since we've closed, we're trying to like sort of see how we can get programming out to people remotely. And so these videos tend to be about 2 to 6 minutes long. Lately, we've been more about 3. And they have become sort of formulaic, which I like, that appeals to me. Like I found something that works for me. And yeah, so like you end up doing these videos and they start taking a minute, like in the beginning, like don't worry, like as you do it, it'll get easier. But yeah, when I'm picking an activity, I really do prioritize sort of accessibility of materials and accessibility in skill. I think the skill one is pretty obvious because it's a kid's craft, and so you want to make sure that kids are able to do it. And so like picking things that, yeah, they can do. And then in terms of materials, I don't know about y'all, but I can just like absorb craft materials. Like my room is just covered. And yeah, so, but not everyone's like that. And so making sure that the craft that you're teaching, people are able to do from their homes when they don't necessarily have like a ton of materials. So that can be making sure that you're choosing crafts that if they don't have paint, they can use markers or stuff like that. Another thing we've been doing is using recycled materials, which was fun, both in terms of like, I like using like found art kind of stuff, but also in like an environmental way. And so we've made like these fun like toy whirligigs out of recycled cardboard. We've also done brown paper masks out of brown paper bags. And so yeah, just being creative and trying to make sure that people are actually able to do your activities. Another important thing would be captioning. So I haven't fully captioned all of my videos, but I've been sort of doing the minimum so far, which I'm making sure that all of the like vital information is written out. I think captioning is something that's important, and I could do better about that. But so if you are going to be doing like a sort of voiceover video, prioritizing making it accessible in that way would be very important. Um, yeah. Oh, I must have talked very quickly. I hope y'all got all that information. Yeah, I think that that's all I have for y'all today. If you want to check out any of the videos, you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Our Instagram is at Chapel Hill Public Library. And if you see any more of those kind of time-lapse videos, feel free to tag us. I would love some like interlibrary love. Yeah, thanks so much to everyone. And yeah, thanks for letting me talk at you for a little bit.
Sophia, I have a couple questions from the group, if you wouldn't mind answering them.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Okay, first and foremost, now that your dog is a movie star, we need to know the name.
Her name is Gracie.
Oh, Gracie. Thank you for sharing the Instagram handle. Do you want to say it again? People asked.
It's at Chapel Hill Public Library.
Super. Is there a name for that doodle that you did with us?
Not that I know of. I saw the original, like I had a TikTok for a while, and so that was like the inspiration, and they didn't have a name for it. But yeah, so just like checkerboard scribble, drippy checkerboard, something like that.
Cool. And then I was wondering, I'm curious what it looks like when you set up your phone to record you drawing. Can you share that?
So good question. I have this like plank of wood that I'll balance on like a stool or something, and then I put my phone like right on top with, I think this back camera works a lot better than the front one. And so I'll put it down like that, and then I'll just set up my paper underneath it and make sure that it's framed well, and like maybe putting some stuff around it to make it kind of cute. But yeah.
That is very cool, and I was never going to guess that. So thank you so much for telling us.
Yeah, you don't need a ton of equipment for this. It's sort of like, I mean, that's for me, you know.
Yeah. Well, if no one has any other questions right now, people can also send questions as the presentation goes on. Thank you so much, Sophia.
Y'all.
It was so fun to hear from you. So our next presenter today will be Brian Ritter. Brian is the key account marketing manager for Timber Press, where he's worked for nearly a decade. His job allows him to combine two of his passions, books and the natural world. Brian spent his childhood running through the woods near his house and hanging out at the local library. He liked to give a shout out to his current local library, the Central Branch of the Multnomah County Library. Thanks for joining us today, Brian.
I just realized I should have used #DreamJob in my bio, because we are pretty lucky here. So hello everyone, and thank you for joining us and for letting me share some of our 2020 titles with you. Timber Press is off to a great start this year with books such as Grow Your Own Tea, which book list called The Guide of Guides to the Cultivation of Tea, and best-selling author Catherine Alto, soon to be released, Writing Wild, a celebration of 25 inspiring writers and the impact they've had on nature writing, as well as Botanical Art Techniques, the ultimate how-to guide to the essential botanical art techniques, and which has received a starred review from both Library Journal and Booklist. Thank you very much. We love those starred reviews. I'd also like to point out the two native plant primers, one for the Southeast and one for the Midwest, both of which ship in July. This is the beginning of a new regional series for us, and these books allow us to take some of the mystery out of gardening with native plants. Each primer is an easy reference for gardeners of any skill level and provide the best native plant choices for each region and detail how gardeners can grow them successfully. Booklist wrote that the Midwest Native Plant Primer is approachable and likely to be useful to a wide range of gardeners, and we couldn't agree more. I'd also like to take a moment to mention Nature's Best Hope, and that's on the next slide here. The latest book, and this is the latest book from Doug Tallamy. You may know Doug from his previous best-selling book, Bringing Nature Home, in which he advocates for the preservation of native wildlife through the use of native plants. In Nature's Best Hope, Tallamy introduces the idea of a sort of national park where homeowners and gardeners create wildlife habitat corridors out of a patchwork of yards, green spaces, and even container gardens. This would provide birds and pollinators with much needed habitat and help combat climate change. And because it relies on personal initiative, it is immune to political instability. Talmy outlines his vision, of course, but he also provides specific suggestions gardeners can incorporate in their own spaces to create gardens that are both beautiful and beneficial. And this is a timely topic, and interest in this book continues to grow. And I know publishers often label their books as important, but we really do feel this one qualifies, and we'd love to see a copy in every library. So, all right, now on to our fall titles. I'm starting with 2 personal accounts of starting over and the audacious gardens that came out of that change. A celebrated modern plant explorer and collector, Daniel Hinckley, is one of the biggest names in horticulture. Even Martha Stewart refers to him as a horticulturist extraordinaire. When Dan gave up his beloved Heronswood, where he lived and operated a popular nursery, he couldn't have chosen a more unlikely spot for his new garden. Wincliffe sits, as the name suggests, on a rocky, windswept bluff overlooking the Puget Sound. Wincliffe, the book, is an intimate and inspiring celebration of the world-renowned private garden Dan created there. Filled with garden lessons and creative plant choices, readers will be encouraged by his sage advice and unique plant suggestions and appreciate his optimistic and often humorous views on what it means to be a gardener. Spectacularly illustrated with photography by Claire Tackett, Wincliffe is both beautiful and informative, and it ships in August 2020. While many baby boomers are downsizing their homes, celebrated garden writer and designer Paige Dickey did just the opposite. Paige and her husband Bosco went from 3 acres in Westchester County, New York, to 17 acres in Connecticut with a view of the Berkshire Hills. And you gardeners out there and homeowners can appreciate how big 3 acres is, let alone 17. Keep in mind that Paige was 74 years old when she moved. Her husband was 80. Uprooted is the endearing and engaging story of leaving a beloved garden behind and creating a new, very different garden. Readers will follow Paige as she searches for a new home, gets to know the landscape, establishes a new garden, and learns to be a different kind of gardener. She had to embrace the advice she'd been giving others for years: garden smarter, not harder. This tale of loss and renewal will appeal to fans of classic garden writers such as Margaret Roach, Dominic Browning, and Jamaica Kincaid. Uprooted by Paige Dickey ships in September 2020. All right, so far we've gone from the Puget Sound to the Berkshire Hills, and now we're going to take a tour of some of the most spectacular private gardens of Europe. Adventures in Eden is an armchair tour of 50 modern private gardens that illuminate the beauty and artistry of Europe's strong garden heritage. Created by some of the biggest names in garden design, these landscapes are rarely seen by the public, but can be viewed in these pages through the sharp eye of some of the biggest names in garden photography. Our tour guide is none other than Carolyn Mullet, founder of Carrick's Garden Tours, which is known for its clever, highly selective global garden tours. Mullet provides the commentary, short essays which share the history of each landscape, details why specific plants and design techniques were chosen, and reveals how the gardens connect to their broader surroundings. Adventures in Eden by Carolyn Mullet is available in October 2020. Okay, and now for something not quite, but almost completely different, and something that this audience might appreciate. An herbarium is like a library, a plant library. It is one of the ways knowledge, it's one of the ways knowledge of the natural world is accumulated and shared, which is increasingly important in an era of climate change. The wealth of specimens available today, carefully preserved through the centuries, is a unique source of data that helps scientists to understand how vegetation has changed over time and to predict how it will change in the future. Barbara Tears is director of the second largest herbarium in the world, the William and Linda Steer Herbarium at the New York Botanical Garden. And in Herbarium, she shares the fascinating story of how herbaria began, how they are used, and how they function today. Readers will discover the important contributions they have made and how they are under threat. Tears argues passionately for their preservation and for the important role they play in protecting plant life for generations to come. Herbarium is heavily illustrated with photographs and unique historical material from the collection at the New York Botanical Garden, and it ships in November 2020. Okay, I think it's time for a little tea break. I need to wet my mouth there. And did I mention Grow Your Own Tea by Timber Press? There really is no book like it, and it's available now. Plus, you only have to grow one plant and you can make every kind of tea there is. And what plant is that? Well, you'll have to get the book to find out. Okay, thank you. I needed to wet my mouth. Oregon, where Timber Press is located, has a reputation for rain. And while a third of the state is covered with rainforest, the summer years are typically dry, very dry. This is also true for much of Northern California, Washington State, British Columbia, and anywhere that has a Mediterranean climate. Gardening in a place that has soggy winters and dry summers can be a challenge. Enter Gardening in Summer Dry Climates by Nora Harlow with photographs by Saxon Holt. This is the definitive plant guide for gardeners who want a lush and colorful garden that thrives in a summer dry climate. A landscape architect by training, Harlow explains how topography and climate relate and how plants then adapt to the climate. She includes a comprehensive plant directory with detailed growing needs, and Saxon Holt's stunning photography shows how smart design can help address seasonal issues. Gardening in Summer Dry Climate will be available in December 2020, and plenty of time to get a jump on the next summer dry season. All right, gardening advice. Gardening advice often comes in the form of rules. Do this, don't do that. And quick moving trends can overwhelm gardeners and stifle creativity. Lori Bowl wants to change that. Founder of the popular blog Danger Garden, Lori urges gardeners to break the rules, take more risks, and grow what they love. She wants gardeners to consider a new way of gardening that encourages risk-taking in both plant choice and design. In Fearless Gardening, Bowl offers gardeners advice on how to garden outside their zone, how to shop for unique plants, and how to incorporate containers into the mix. Readers will also find tips on how to discover their personal style and expand their plant palette. And along the way, Bowl profiles exemplary gardens that showcase each gardener's unique taste and style. Written by a well-known garden writer with a fearless garden of her own, Fearless Gardening is packed with plant suggestions and design advice and will be available in December 2020. People in the American West have a particular fondness for the landscape, and gardeners in the American West are no exception. We paired two of the brightest stars in garden media to explore how this rugged landscape influences the way people garden, and the result is an ideal marriage of art and content. In Under Western Skies, Cultivating Place host Jennifer Jewell and accomplished photographer and stylist Caitlin Atkinson profile 35 of the most innovative and stunning gardens in the region. From Desert Perch to Seaside Oasis, Jewell and Atkinson reveal how the grandeur and beauty of the region's landscape set the stage for remarkable garden design, how the various climates allow for a multitude of plant possibilities, and how the gardeners themselves relate to the land, and how that has inspired and informed their choices. Nature is a source of inspiration to the gardeners in this book. Rather than something to be dominated, it is something to be embraced and celebrated. And here's a fun fact. One of the featured gardens is the Portland-based garden of Timber Press publisher Andrew Beckman. Under Western Skies will be available in February 2021. All right, well, thanks again for taking some time to hear about many of the upcoming titles from Timber Press. I've included my contact information here as well as our social media platforms. Please connect with us if you haven't already, and feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions or if you just want to talk books. All right, well, thanks again, and bye for now.
Thank you so much, Brian. Our final presenter today will be Jenn Carson. Jenn Carson, she, her, hers, MSLIS, CYT, CCYT, is an internationally recognized expert in physical literacy, an award-winning author, and the director of the L.P. Fisher Public Library in Woodstock, New Brunswick, Canada. She is a visionary leader who was deemed by Amplify East as a remarkable woman making a difference in Atlantic Canada. In 2019, she was named a mover and shaker by Library Journal and hailed as the lethal librarian in a feature profile in Edit magazine for her radical librarianship and self-defense advocacy. Close us out, Jenn.
Hey, thanks a lot. Today I'm not going to be talking about physical literacy or jujitsu or self-defense training. I'm going to be talking about art, which is one of my other loves. So if you want to flip to the next slide for me. we're going to be talking about making art at home. So that's something that we can help patrons with in our libraries and that really does tie into physical literacy. We're keeping their bodies moving and we're connecting their fine motor skills, which helps with their literacy as well. If you want to move to the next slide for me, I'm going to talk a little bit about product art versus process art. And Sophia touched on that a little bit when she said she likes to have a plan and sort of like steps to follow. So there's two different ways of kind of thinking about making art. So product-based art, if you're doing it with children, would be like adult-led or parent-led. And if you're just doing it yourself, it's the kind of thing where like if you sign up for something online and you follow it step by step, you know, do this, and then this is what the product's going to look like. Or if you're looking around on Pinterest and it shows you, you know, all the materials you need and here's what you're going to get at the end. And so it's structured and you should have fairly uniform results. So like everybody's end product should look pretty much the same. So that's product-based art. Process-based art is more artist-led, or if you're doing it with children, it's child-led. So the parent or the teacher or the librarian doesn't have too much input. They kind of let the kid or let yourself just do what feels naturally and just play with the materials. And that's more open-ended. So you end up with unique outcomes. And I'm going to show you guys some pictures of the differences between how they could come out. And so that's more about like creating a maker space where you just put a bunch of materials out and you say, hey, what can you come up with this? And I really want to stress that there's not one better than the other, right? For some people, those of us that are maybe a little bit nervous about making art, or those that like to have a lot of control over things, I don't know about any librarians here that would like to control their circumstances, but I can say there's probably a few. They would be more inclined towards product-based art. They want to know what the outcome's going to be, and they want to see where they're going, and they want to be able to document it and all that stuff. And and as we get older, we tend to be more like that as well sometimes, where kids are more willing to just let stuff fly and make a big mess. And they can be more prone towards process-based art. But some of us are like big kids and we never quite grow out of that. And so I want to stress that one's not better than the other, and they're both really fun. And I like to give opportunities for parents and children, as well as adults on their own, to try both. So if you want to move to the next slide, I'm going to show you some visual examples. So here's product-based art. So this is, you know, everybody's told we're going to make a penguin today in story time, and we have all the stuff cut out already pretty much, or like the outlines drawn, and we practice our cutting, and we glue on the same size googly eyes and the same triangle beak, and we hang them up, and you can't really tell like Bobbi's penguin from Grace's penguin or Annie's penguin. They all pretty much look like the same penguin. And again, one's not better than the other. And those are very important tools to have, right? When you become an adult in the workforce, especially if you were working on like an assembly line, you would want every single thing you're working on to look exactly the same. There's something important about being able to replicate something uniformly. But at the same time, sometimes it's fun to not do that, or sometimes we have jobs that require us to think outside the box and to not replicate something over and over again. So if you move to the next slide, we're going to see the opposite, which is process art. So look at all of these penguins, which look radically different from each other, right? So they're still penguins. You can tell they're penguin-ish. But they definitely have the essence of the person who made them in that penguin. So maybe Grace's penguin and Annie's penguin look radically different from each other. And Annie can say, hey, that's my penguin because I chose to make really big eyes and a little tiny orange beak. And Grace can say, well, that's my penguin because I made really big yellow feet because I love my yellow rain boots. And so again, one's not better than the other. They're just different ways of making art. And some people will be really drawn to this and be like, yeah, those are my penguins. I want to just do whatever. And other people will be like, whoa, chaos. I like the picture perfect penguins from the first slide. Okay, so it's interesting to kind of just see that in yourself and notice when you're teaching, if you're a librarian or a school librarian and you're teaching kids, notice and see if you can teach the opposite of what you normally do, just for a little challenge for yourself. Okay, if you want to move to the next slide, I'm going to talk about some programs we do here at the library. So This is me in the middle giving you the kissy shoulder with some of my patrons and one of their moms at the library here. And this is a trash and show that we did. So this is a very process-based art project. So we collected a bunch of trash at the library and recyclables, and we had people bring in stuff from home, and the patrons, my staff brought things in from home. And we just made big piles of trash in our activity room. And we had a bunch of people come in. These are just some of the people that were there. And we're like, okay, make whatever you want out of this stuff. And I just put out like tape and staplers and ribbons and anything they could tie the things together with. And I was like, go to town, you've got like an hour, I'll come around and help you if you need some help executing your ideas. And then we're gonna have a fashion show. And then we went upstairs and we played, those of you that aren't Canadian, I'm from Canada, but if you know fashion television, there's the theme song from fashion television. We played that and everybody walked down our makeshift runway in the stacks, and we had a great time. And so this is an example of some process-based art. And so there's a link there if you wanna see more pictures that I put up. Each of these programs, because I don't have time to tell you about all of them in super detail, there's links included so you can check out more. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll talk about a different program. So this is a painted rocks program that we did at the library. And you could really encourage people to work on this at home, right? And same with the trash and show, right? They could do this at home, but they could also paint rocks and hide them around the community for people to find. And that's what we did, is we went out and collected a bunch of rocks, and we had people bring in special rocks they found in their yards. And then we painted them all. We just laid out paints. And so what we did to make this process and product-based is, for those who were more inclined to doing product-based art, we had book examples out of like different pictures or, you know, things that they could follow, coloring books. And so they could trace the pictures on and then just like sort of like paint by number, color it in. So some people felt much more comfortable with that, and other people weren't intimidated at all by a blank rock and a bunch of paint, and they just went to town. So you can, you know, do it one way or the other, or both, which is what we did. And then people hide these rocks all over town, and sometimes they put really nice messages on them, like be well, or breathe, or relax, or whatever, and people find them. And then they take a picture of them and put them up on Facebook. And then, you know, someone else will go hunting for them, and it becomes this little thing that we do here in Carleton County where I live. So you could start something like that in your library region. And again, you don't have to do it in person. You can do it from home. And there's a link there to a blog post I wrote about it for the American Library Association if you want to check that out. If you want to go to the next slide. So story blocks is something that I do at home with my own kids, and we play with in the car to keep them busy. And I also do it at the library, but again, it's something that people could do at home right now. So you just get these little wooden blocks. You can get them at the dollar store, any place, hardware stores sell them. And you just take markers. Permanent markers work well. See, you can see the fingers in the picture got really dirty with regular markers. Permanent markers don't rub off as much. And you just get the kids to draw pictures on them, but adults can do it too. And so you can either draw faces for like happy, sad, mad, you know, like emotions, or you can draw objects like apples or fruits, you know, other different kinds of fruits, or colors, or houses, or whatever you think might be a good idea for storytelling, different nouns. And then what we do, everybody gets a certain amount, and then you roll them like dice. And then you have to tell a story based on which pictures are facing up. So let's say you get a frog and a corn cob and a picture of a cloud. Well, now you've got to make up an interesting story about a corn cob, a cloud, and a frog. And sometimes the stories the kids tell are very interesting, but it's ways to keep them busy and engaged with literacy and oral storytelling, and also making art at the same time. And again, this could be as process or product based as you wanted. So you could get really detailed and specific by putting some examples out and letting people copy those, or you could just let them go to town and use their imaginations. And again, I've written about this for the American Library Association on their Programming Librarian blog, and you're welcome to read that for a more detailed explanation and lots more pictures. If you want to move to the next slide. So paper monsters, this is really popular at my library. It's a program I put on once a year. And again, it's something that you could encourage people to do at home. You can use anything you have lying around the house, like cardstock or construction paper, or old magazines, and we just let the kids make up monsters. And every kid has like some secret fear of a monster in their head somewhere that they've got, like whatever it looks like. And so getting the kids to make those monsters come to life, sometimes really interesting. Some will have like a TV shaped head, and some will have like booger fingers and all kinds of crazy stuff they come up with. And again, you could make this really specific, like you could put, you know, monsters from different movies up and have people copy those, or from storybooks, and you know, make it more product based. Or you can just let them come up with whatever's in their imaginations. For me, I like it that way, so I just put out different construction paper and googly eyes and markers and scissors and glitter and whatever, and let them go to town. And you know, they can make up whatever kind of monsters they want, and then we usually tell scary stories about them. So that's, you know, as scary as the age of the audience allows. So that's something that you could try to do as a digital program with your patrons, and you can do at home with your own kids or adults. It's really fun. And again, there's a link there to the Programming Librarian blog that I write for, with a more detailed description of this program. And if you want to move to the next line. Yeah, so tile art. This one's really good to do with adults, but you can also do it with kids too. You do need to use rubbing alcohol, so just make sure the kids are old enough that they're not going to drink out of the bottle or spill it everywhere, because that would be a really bad thing. And also, it does use Sharpie markers, so if you want them to be able to wash their hands afterwards and not go home smelling like alcohol, probably aim for an older crowd. But again, this is, again, it can be product based, but it's really free form, because what happens is you draw a picture on the tile with your Sharpie marker, and then you spray it with some rubbing alcohol in a spray bottle. You will need a spray bottle. It doesn't work really well if you just flick it. And it just drips everywhere, and then you let it dry, and you can spray it with like a sealant if you want to, but it makes these really pretty designs. And again, it's sort of like as wild as you want to let it. So you can try to be really conservative and just, you know, try to replicate some piece of art you've already seen somewhere, but it gets kind of drippy, so you have to sort of let go a little bit. You can't be too anal with this craft activity, because it's sort of built into it that it's going to get drippy. But this one's a great one for adults to do, because they get a ceramic tile afterwards, and maybe they want to incorporate that into some you know, home improvements they're making in their house. Maybe they're going to want to do a whole backsplash of them. It's really fun. And you can just get these plain white tiles anywhere at your hardware store, right? And so there's another link for more explanation, because I knew I didn't have enough time to tell you all the details, and there's more pictures there if you want. All right, moving to the next slide. Digital storytelling. So not all art has to be made, you know, with messy paint and alcohol and googly eyes. So digital storytelling is something that I like to do as well, where I'll just use Movie Maker or any kind of free editing software you can get online. And then you can record kids acting out a play, or maybe doing stop motion with Lego or clay and claymation. Or what I did here, this is a picture of a carrot that I made out of some paper. And I told a whole story through paper. And there's a link there that you can actually watch the story I wrote called Carrots in a Pickle. And the kids and I illustrated it with some paper. So that's a really fun way to teach digital literacy skills to children and adults, and continue their art making and storytelling. And again, if you follow that link, there'll be more details than I have time to share with you today. I just really wanted to spark your imaginations and think of some different ways that you can incorporate crafts and arts and literacy programming into what you're doing, even if you have to do it remotely right now. Because I just opened my library back up to the public today, but we're not doing any programming yet, except for online programming is just starting to get rolling. So I know some of you are very badly missing your patrons and wanting to be doing some online programming with them. So I wanted to give you some fun ideas. If you want to move along. So that was the end of my portion of the presentation. I hope that you guys got some good ideas, and maybe if you didn't know before, now you know the difference between process and product-based art. And again, I wanted to reiterate that one is not better than the other, and as long as you're making art, you're an artist.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, and thank you for that reminder that we can all be artists. We have a few questions that I wanted to throw out to the group, and actually they're mostly specific, so I'll make it clear who I'm asking. One thing is that lots of people asked about Sophia's crafts. So Sophia, I'm hoping you wouldn't mind sharing some links with us to send in our follow-up tomorrow.
Sure, of course.
That's so great, thank you. And for Brian, someone asked, is native plants for the Northeast available? So maybe just some interest in your other regional titles.
All right. Native, I'm assuming they're referring to the native plant primers or some of the bigger books. We have a native plants for the Southeast, which is more of like a plant encyclopedia. So the next native plant primer, which is more of a beginner-based book or for homeowners, the next one scheduled for that is the Pacific Northwest. So I don't have a timeline on the next one for the Northeast region. But if people want to reach out to me and give me their contact information, I can put them on a notification for when that might be available. And then for the bigger books, the bigger plant encyclopedias, we don't have any plans for one for the Northeast.
Okay, great, thank you. Somebody asked if the tea book discusses the native Ilex vomitoria plant. Yeah,
and so that's a holly, and I don't think so. I answered in the Q&A. I don't have the digital copy of the book with me, so I couldn't search the index right quick, and I apologize for that. The one plant it does discuss is Camellia sinensis, and that's the plant that most traditional tea comes from. And then the recipes in this book can then be modified for, other plants and other kinds of teas. But I've left I've given the questioner my email address, and we'll follow up, and I'll make for sure. I'll see for certain if that's included.
Okay, thank you so much, Brian. And I just have a couple questions for Jen. Somebody asked what kind of paint to use on those painted rocks to make them last as long as possible.
Oh yeah, we use acrylic because acrylic is plastic based, and so it's pretty waterproof, and it dries really quickly. You don't want to use anything oil based because it takes a really long time to dry, and it's super smelly. And tempera paint would be too runny, and watercolor, same thing, would just run off. So I would use acrylic. And that seems to work really well, and you can mix it together and make fun colors, and it's cheap. You can buy cheap like toll painting acrylic for like 99 cents a bottle or less at the dollar store.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's super helpful. And then do you have a Facebook or Instagram account to share with our audience?
No, not for the library. But I do, if you want to go to the Programming Librarian blog, that's where most of those craft ideas are. So if you just go to American Library Association's Programming Librarian, it's programminglibrarian.org. And in the search box, you just search my name, Jenn Carson. You'll see almost all of my blog posts there. I write one every month, and I've been doing it for like 4 or 5 years. So there's lots for you to find. There's lots of ideas.
Oh, great. That's terrific. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And thank you to all of our wonderful panelists today. Just thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming programs. If you haven't already, be sure to check out Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors post daily about all things books and library land. And did you know that Booklist content is freely available to all until further notice? Start reading with our digital edition, a format that pairs the page-by-page reading experience of print with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com. If you're interested in subscribing, please take advantage of this special offer to get print, online, digital, and archive access to Booklist for only $99. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, and one more thank you to our sponsors, Workman and Timber Press. This concludes today's webinar.